All right, hi everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you so much for joining. This is the May 2021 Life Design Analysis webinar. I'm your host, Charlie Conran. I'm the founder and CTO of Life Design Analysis. And this month, I think we have a great webinar for you lined up. We're really focusing around setting up the most effective remote meeting for insurance advisors. So, obviously, at least here in Ontario, we're in sort of what they're calling the third wave or even tighter lockdowns. And, for those of us who are trying to still keep productive with business going, and it's a lot tougher. We can't get out there on the golf course, and primarily again we're ordered to stay at home and do all of our meetings and sort of presentations remotely. So we wanted to cover some of the best tips and kind of advice for setting up an insurance presentation using Life Design Analysis. But we're also going to talk about some of the other tools, best practices in scheduling these, and little tips and tricks that you can use to really just ensure that you have kind of the most cohesive presentation that really communicates your message. Now, just before we go ahead and get started, just a few housekeeping items. This webinar is going to be recorded, as all our webinars are, but if you're looking for a copy after the webinar, you'll find it right on our website, lifedesignanalysis.com. It's right on the blog with all the other past webinars. So just on the same landing page where you registered, you'll find a video recording of the webinar. All of the case build is going to be done with inside Life Design Analysis, and if you are, sort of exploring the software for the first time or seeing this and like any of these concepts using the software, feel free to visit our website. Again, we do have a 30-day free trial where you can sign up free. Again, we don't take credit card information up front, so you can try it for 30 days and then choose the package that fits your needs. Again, we do have lots of different packages available, and if you are a Life Guide subscriber, you also receive an exclusive discount to our software. So just enter your serial number there if you are a Life Guide subscriber when it comes time for subscription. But as I say, it is a web-based software that you can access from anywhere. If you're seeing it for the first time, absolutely feel free to sign up and give it a try. Now, if you are with another MGA, we also have other MGA discounts, so feel free to reach out and ask us on our live chat if you have any questions operating the software or giving it a try. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing we're going to have to decide, if we're the ones booking the meeting, is sort of what platform we're going to use to actually facilitate the meeting. And as an advisor, it's probably a good idea to have a few different ones on your shelf. I find, for security conscious people, a lot of organizations at the upper level have Microsoft Teams and sort of prefer that. I find a lot of customers really prefer Zoom, and it's obviously very popular right now. We use Google Meets, and we use pretty much the whole G Suite. So, for my presentation today, I'm going to be using Google Meet for the most part. But I would say, as someone who uses all of them very frequently, there's a lot of really good options out there. I won't dive too much into, sort of the best ones, but, I would say really the best video conferencing software is the one that is comfortable for you and that you are comfortable facilitating, sort of the operations of it while you're speaking. The one thing I will say when I hear feedback from other people about which ones they like, Google Hangouts or Meets as it's called now versus say Zoom. Some people really like their face on the screen while they're presenting so that they can always see their audience reaction. I find sometimes when I'm presenting with Google Meets, I'm really so focused on my screen, I can't really see the audience reaction. And a lot of time you're going to get a lot of feedback from that. So, while it's probably a good idea to try a few of them, some of the most popular ones are Zoom. I don't know how, I haven't used Skype too much, but I know, again, that's sort of been transitioned into Teams. Cisco, I find, is a little bit heavy, so it's not a bad operation if you're doing something like a webinar. Same with GoTo. We use it for all of our webinars, but we use Google Meets for our traditional meetings. And I find Google Meets is a lot lighter, so you can just send a link. No, you don't have to necessarily have an operating client, where a lot of these, like Zoom, you're going to actually have to have the client, or same with Teams, you're going to have an installed client. And they do all have apps and things like that, but sometimes I find it's a lot more lightweight to be using Google, because you can just simply share a link that can be viewed over web. I think the same is true for Zoom. I've also used Join Me as well, which is a really nice, light kind of meeting. And again, I think it's merged again with GoTo. So there's a lot of change that happens kind of in that space. But really, my recommendations, if you're looking at kind of a video platform, Zoom is very good, Google Meets is very good, and Microsoft Teams are very good. Again, if you're going to start doing larger presentations and things like that, again, you might think of doing webinars. Go ahead and use that. So as an advisor, again, good idea to have a lot of these installed, because your clients may have a certain preference, or you may send a Google Meets or something like that, and they have a firewall, and you have to have sort of a plan B to back up on. So again, choose whichever one you're comfortable with, but have a backup in that case. Now, when starting this, it's going to really all kick off with the invite. So again, this is something that you can either send over email. I find that kind of the best way to work back and forth finding a time is after we kind of propose it, just basically put out an invite. So I'm going to call this policy review. Again, we want something really descriptive that's going to stand out in our calendar. So again, we could say policy review, give some description in there, but really, adding the video conference, and this kind I'm going to use Google Meets. And this is what I say, it makes it very, very easy to kind of schedule and add those meeting links in there. All I have to do is click join with Google Meets. It adds kind of the link address. And again, if I was emailing it, all I'd have to do is simply copy this over and kind of schedule that link in an email. Why I like adding it in the calendar is it's going to notify me things like 10 minutes before. Again, I can always change that kind of stuff as well. So whether you're using sort of Outlook or maybe a CRM, you can always kind of change that reminder for your clients. If you think your clients need to be a little bit more prepared, you can say remind me 15 more minutes. If you want a little bit more lead time, add that in there. But again, really, really easy to add using kind of G Suite tools and Google Meets. But again, remember, if you are using something like another platform for video sharing, like a Zoom or a GoToMeeting, check, depending on your browser, check the extension store. So this is the Chrome Web Store because I'm on a Chrome browser here. But again, if I was using Zoom, there's lots of ways I can add that Zoom meeting directly to my calendar. So look for certain extensions. I know GoToMeeting definitely has an extension. Zoom has one. Microsoft Teams has one. And that basically gives the same sort of functionality where you can just add a meeting link directly into the invite. It makes it so much easier for guests who live and die by the calendar like me, because again, they can quickly pull it up, kind of see what the meeting is about and have the link right there. So it's all going to be added in there. The next, I'm just going to add a guest. So I'm just going to add info account here. We'll add our guest there. Now, the next thing I really want to do is go into either adding a description or attachment. So again, if you are, sort of sending anything in advance, maybe a KYC letter or something like that, any kind of compliance documentation, you can add a description into the event. So again, I'm just going to say add a description. And one of the things you might actually think about in this description role is if you did want to, perhaps, depending on the type of meeting, you might even think of, collecting certain things from your client. So again, I'm just going to pop over here to the dashboard. One example of this, and again, I'll just, start with a sample client here. So I'm just going to say Phil here. So I'll take Phil. And one of the things I might think of doing and using in that kind of meeting prep is if I'm going to review the policy, I might want to get a refreshed needs analysis from Phil. So again, I can go into his personal needs analysis, start with a blank one here. But what I'm actually going to do is click this link to client button up the top there. And you can see when I do that, it highlights this unique URL to this needs analysis. And this is something that I could kind of grab here, come back to my calendar and say, please, Phil. I can give that meeting link and I can go ahead and save that. And this is going to say, do you want to send that out to the calendar list? Traditionally I'd say go ahead and send. Right now I'm just going to say don't send. I want to kind of review that a little bit more. So again, I can see my policy review. I can see my notes. Please fill in the needs analysis before our meeting if possible. And when our guest gets this in their email, of course, they can click through this, fill out the needs analysis. So that's one way of sort of seeding an idea of, maybe if you need a little bit of work done in advance, you can actually include it in that link. So now again, before the meeting, my client can go through and say, I have $300,000 of current insurance, $40,000 in assets. I just bought, brand new big house in Toronto, or small house in Toronto, and I'm making $80,000 after tax. Again, I have a couple kids, so I'm going to throw in a little education fund for them. And I've got some household debt, so we're going to say we've got $3,000 on the credit card. Maybe they've got they did a little home reno to the kitchen or something like that, and maybe a Sea-Doo or something like that. So they financed a little bit of that. Again, we'll add a nice value for last expenses in there, and anything else that we might want to give. So a lot of times I see the idea of charitable gift. Remembering this is our client filling it out, so they might you put certain things in here, and you might actually go back and correct them later. So again, they might get to this and say, okay, that's good. I'm going to save the changes, and you can see my need there at $1.2 million. Now, you're going to get a notification when your clients do fill this out, but the whole idea of seeding it in there in your calendar is a really great way to kind of onboard clients, especially new ones in a non-face-to-face. So this way, at least before the meeting, we can get a little bit constructive, and again, we've got an actual need that we're working with. Now, another idea you could use along this kind of same idea would be if you were using something like a Calendly or a CRM booking where you had different sort of time slots. Again, you could actually more generically put in something like LDA lead gen, which is sort of embedded on your website, but then add it into sort of meeting invites. So if you had a certain policy type or a certain review type or intro meeting, again, rather than, kind of putting that stuff in there, we could put this, So again, we could put something like, please fill in your details to get some discussion points. Again, we're going to save this. I'm not going to send that. But in the same way, as part of your meeting here, again, I could quickly click on the link, and that's going to take me to the lead gen, where again, I'm going to create my own contact for the advisor. Again, I can put in all my details, and you might think about this option if you're scaling this a little more. So as I say, some of the, kind of the CRM options that we have out there, they'll leave, kind of a booking window, and you can kind of pick your appointment slot. For certain appointments, if it was sort of someone that you're introducing or you're generating a lead, again, you could direct them to this page where, again, they could go through the needs analysis, fill in sort of their details where you wouldn't have to collect it, even things like their purpose. And again, if they say they're not sure how much insurance they need, or they have an idea of how much insurance you need, again, it's going to feed them through that lead gen page where, again, they can enter that kind of information for a needs analysis and at least have some product discussion. So really setting the foundation for the meeting in the agenda is really important. Again, you might have some, discussion points that you want to put. So you could say, please fill in your ideas, review needs. Oops. I'll say review needs. Products. And then a personal review after. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, give them a little context. We're going to take their details, and we're going to say in our meeting, we're going to review those needs. We're going to discuss some products that fit those needs, and then we'll leave you with a personal review after where you can think about it, go back, husband and wife, that sort of thing, and review the coverage that we're going to talk about in the meeting. So setting a strong agenda, or even including things like a link to a needs analysis, is a really good idea in your meeting. Again, we're going to have that join meeting in there, and it's all going to be tied and sent to our guests over email. Again, sometimes if I'm not sure on the date, I'll leave it open so that they can modify it. Again, lots of different sort of actions that you can do. Put an RSVP in there. Even if you don't know what time they're with, and again, I'll just save this and say don't send. When you go into there, there is the option in the edit event where we can find a time as well. So again, this is the event details that I'm proposing. A lot of times if you want to find a time, you can send your guests and get a preview of their calendar. So again, it also helps to kind of cure the back and forth where we're not digging through our calendars. But those are a few best practices, I think, for the invite itself. Now, just before I move on to building a case, I'll show you just quickly what I mean by calendar links. So this is, kind of a scheduling page. Again, you can see I went to just Nick's here through his link, and you can see I can book a time slot for a discovery call or a training. Again, that's where I'm talking about. You could add, again, the lead gen into, maybe it's a preliminary review or something like that, where you add kind of a time box, and in that meeting, you kind of perpetually have the link to this lead gen. So again, customers can always onboard. Now, you can see next phase of this is after we've kind of sent the meeting invite, we've got kind of our technology in place in terms of Zoom or Google Meets or GoToMeeting or Microsoft Teams. The next thing we want to do is really kind of prepare the case. So again, in this scenario, ideally, again, we've gotten our notification that our client has actually filled out the needs analysis, and you can see from sending them that link over the calendar, They filled it out, and you can see I've got a 1.28 need here. Now again, remember, when the client fills it out, you can always go back in. You can kind of change any of these values if you think maybe they're overstating one or understating one. Again, you can kind of customize those as well. In this case, I'm just going to leave mine as is. And the other thing you can do is, if you don't want that link hanging out there, you can actually unshare it. You're going to keep the results of the needs analysis. It's just the client's not going to be able to go back to that link that you sent them over the calendar once you've collected it. And again, all of that can be tied in with the case. So again, as we sort of go and do the products. Now again, our client Phil here, we might be reviewing an Inforce policy. So, again, when we think about Inforce policies, if we have existing policies, you can see I've got a Manulife T10, a CI, and just kind of a placeholder policy. If we are doing a review of their existing policy, again, a great way to bring it in is just doing that plus Inforce. And again, that's anything saved to that client file. You can see this is a Term 10 that would issued in 2020, meaning it's basically a year old, and I'm just pulling it in using that plus Inforce button, which is going to pull anything from that client file. So any of these policies that we have in Force are going to be able to be leveraged through that plus Inforce. And again, you can see I can always go in and add a new policy, whether it's through an import or manual, enter information, things like all of the renewals, or as you're creating cases as well, as you have a case in the edit plan, there is a mark as save or update policy if I need to make any kind of changes to this. Again, mark as sold or update policy or save policy is going to be there. So that's how you could kind of bring in the Inforce policy if you were doing a review with this. Now again, I want to set up my case and show, kind of Phil, who's bought this Term 10 fairly recently, but I want to show them their conversion option. So I might have sold the Term 10 to get the insurability in place, and then we're going to work on a quick conversion or something like that. So with this one, this is $1 million vitality. So I'm going to put in $1 million in my insurance benefit here. And then I want to show some different options. So again, if Phil's 42, may still be healthy, I could do kind of a straight up conversion to UL, or I might customize some whole life. So again, really depends on you, your clients, what you're trying to show them. Again, it might even be something like maybe a T100 with values that we want to show them, and kind of look at that. So it really depends. In this case, because I've got, just sort of a Manulife product here, I'm going to work on a straight out term conversion. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to search out some min-funded UL, and I'm going to specifically look for Manulife. So again, I'm going to go out of my preferred companies. I'll do the survey here. Again, you might include something from, a top result. This one's about 15% higher per year. So, we might say, look, I'll add that to the case. It's very easy. You may say, look, it's better to go save 15% every year and go with the standard level. In my case, we're just going to pretend it's a straight up term conversion. I'll just add Manulife to the case there. Okay, so we've got that added. Now the next thing I'm going to do in this case is I'm actually going to add a Manulife whole life here. So again, I'm just going to go down, and this time I'm going to use the spreadsheet import. So I'll select Manulife. I'm going to come across to our Manulife software here, and I'm designing kind of a Manu par here. So you can see I've got $1 million, quite expensive at $37,000. Again, a lot of value in there. Feel free to kind of adjust these as well. So if I think maybe $500,000 base, and I'm going to add a term rider for $500,000 as well. Make sure I have that right. And because my client is 42, I'm going to say let's add this for 10 years. Because I don't want to see those renewals come up and decrease and add to that cost. But really, anything you want to design here, so again, even if we worked off Phil's actual need that he put in, we might add a little bit more term rider to bring that up. I'm just trying to make this premium a little bit more palatable, but again, all depends on your client. I'm sure Phil can actually afford this. Process is very easy to get this kind of information into LDA. I'm just going to go ahead and export all of this data that I've designed in this plan to Excel, and I'm going to select everything, copy the case, and come back to LDA and paste that in there and just upload it. All right, so we've got that in there. Now this is the case we're going to review in the meeting. So really anything I can help do for myself to kind of set myself up for success or be ready to pass this off and present this to the client is going to be helpful. One thing I like to do is when I get a term conversion case, I like to tag it with TC. I might even give it a title, term conversion. So again, one's going to tag it in our system. The other one's going to title the actual case itself. And again, I can go down and sort of customize this a little bit. Again, I can make an internal note. something like the date. And I also might give it a little report note title, so anything that's going to add to my case as well. So again, in this case, I'm doing a term conversion. I might as well add a term conversion note. Keep in mind, I mentioned this before, you can use these kind of global report notes if you like. You can also manage your own template. So if there's a certain note that you use for term conversions, or if there's a certain note that you use for every web meeting, or you're picking up prospects online on face-to-face, it could be an intro kind of note about your services and things like that. So feel free to add any sort of customization. I'm going to go down as well and just sort of, I'll take out my mission statement. I'll leave in that report note. Any sort of concept that you wanted to add in there. Definitely keep the needs analysis for a client. And again, I can get rid of some of these charts. We're not going to be using them. And just focus on, maybe some key metrics here. Again, I'll get rid of the tables and equivalent IRR. So I'm just kind of slimming down this report. I'll just get rid of the credit to the CDA and by term. So again, I'm really going to slim this down, but this is going to be kind of what I'm going to present for my client here. So let's go ahead and generate this in advance and just kind of take a look at the report. Okay, so we've got our great cover page here. Again, remember your logo is obviously going to go there. I've just kind of mocked in ours. You can see that this one, because I added that title on there, is specifically titled a term conversion. And again, I'll show you where that's tagged in the system as well. But again, prepared for my client, presented by me. I've got kind of my standard disclaimer from my account settings. But remember, you can customize that with any sort of regular disclaimer that you want to get out there. You can see my term conversion note is in there, which talks about kind of a term conversion, what it is, what are the benefits. Just gives a little bit of background on sort of the conversation that we're talking about. And remember, I probably won't cover this in the actual kind of remote meeting, but it's going to be really helpful when I send them the link and follow up with our leave behind material. Again, we've got kind of the client's filled out needs analysis in the report. So again, we can start off in our kind of meeting and review that. One of the things I really like about this is, kind of contrasting permanent needs versus temporary needs. And again, we may have said, look, we want, some permanent needs to cover these permanent bases and leave a little inflation in there. But there are some temporary things, we plan on paying off debt. At some point the kids, are going to graduate. So based on certain things like assets, we may have a lower need, but have some need for permanent insurance. So these are good to kind of talk about different chunks of the pie and different time frames for those chunks. Next, you're going to see we're going to basically get into that renewal schedule. And as you notice, when I added that Inforce policy, this is kind of their existing one. You can see it was issued in 2020, so it's showing me years 1 to 9 left. It's automatically taken off, that year that we've already had the policy. You can see the issue date here, February 11th, 2020. And again, we've got kind of our details about the policy itself. And we've got our kind of conversion option. So I did kind of a level UL for life. They would give us $1 million for life, but we are going to pay it for, kind of in perpetuity until that age 100. And then I've designed this Manulife where for years 1 to 10, we've got kind of the $20,000 premium or $19,389. But you can see at the 11th year, I designed it so that term rider falls off, slightly lowering the cost. But again, we're not going to pay past that 20 years because it's a guaranteed 20 pay product. So again, I've got kind of our classic term conversion scenario. And this is one of my favorite presentations in LDA because I think, it really shows the value in permanent products and helps us look at that kind of renewal schedule that is coming up there. So again, just simply looking at, kind of our digital napkin drawing, you can see the slight tick when we drop in premium, losing that term rider. So very affordable term coverage. But at the end of the day, we want to be finished paying and have no more premiums here past age 62. And again, this might be cash flow for retirement, but a great kind of visual that, again, you can move the mouse over year by year. Now remember, one other thing that you might want to do is set yourself up for that follow-up so that when the client's viewing it, again, these are things like using the tooltips. So I might want to explain, again, no payments past 20 years. I could put a little disclaimer, assuming you keep your premiums up. But again, I can add little things like a toggle call out to add a little note there. You can see I can flip these on or off. So again, in the meeting, I'll show you, we might set it up with the toggles off, and we can put those on for the client report. So again, you can add little tooltips. Same sort of thing, sum of premiums. This one's quite nice because, again, we're seeing that sort of break-even product with all of them. So, certainly that term less expensive, but it's going to really, really increase in price. And sometimes it's not about this total accumulation number. It's how we get there. If we were ever even going to be able to, start paying these renewal premiums, or talking about sort of lapsing the policy at, when it gets too expensive. So, just being able to model it out there is quite nice. One of the things you could think about too is adding in, sort of a new term product as a rewrite to even show how it would be, sort of as you reissue it. But again, a really good visual in showing, sort of we end at the same place. This one we stop paying, when we sort of think about retirement and cash flow a little bit. You can always add a PV to this if you wanted to adjust it time value of money. And you can see as I move my kind of mouse over, one thing I would recommend is that when you're presenting this with your audience, be really conscious of keeping your mouse high. I find the effect, a lot of people like to kind of go on the chart and see their mouse cursor on that desired result, but then the box itself is covering up some of the chart. So when you're presenting to your clients, one of the big things is go slow. There's a little bit of a lag when we are over Zoom, so you might think you're going kind of nice and slow here, and it's just chopping, chop, chop, chop. So again, focus in on some of those key points. Think about some of those toggle callouts, but again, we really get to see sort of that break-even point. What line do you want to be? When do you want your insurance to end? In this case, obviously we want our insurance to end when we pass, and so if we think about kind of average life expectancy, we're going to be looking at one of these two lines here. Again, part of the reason we pay the extra money is some of that cash value. So this is another opportunity again to kind of look at these values and just, depending on your client's goals. So again, if they were going to leverage, some of this cash value as maybe part of an insured retirement plan, we might pick a certain age. Again, on the tooltip, we could say, so we could say something like cash value can be taken as loan, tax-free. And again, add that call out to the chart. You can see it's going to add that nice little tooltip. And these just might be speaking points that we want to bring up when we're kind of bringing in that presentation. So again, nice setup of the case. You can see I've got kind of my coverage amount. Again, another opportunity here. I could say something like term rider drops. Again, feel free to kind of use your language and explain it a little bit more. But again, these are going to be helpful as we go through the report, and more so after. Again, I really like this visual in these kind of layered plans. And again, you can make multiple different layers in the system. It really kind of shows that term rider dropping, but again, that insurance increasing. So with this one, we did a layered coverage really to make that insurance premium more palatable. But again, we're still covering that insurance need, sort of in that critical age. So we do have a little bit of a drop there, but really effective way of using a term rider. Remember, all these charts are going to have the guaranteed examples in them as well as those reduced examples. So when in presentations, just like I do, kind of discovering this, again, you can bring in and handle objections. Make sure you disclose the reduced amount. Again, you can show things like the guarantees, and if you're doing multiple products, you can use some of those overlays. Again, at the very end, we've got kind of a nice presentation summary. These are just sort of the numbers to back up the items. One thing I'd recommend is if you're going to share this with your clients after, one of the things you might let them know is that you can see in between these years by just hitting this plus button, just to see those in between years if they're curious. And again, really nice kind of comparison. Cash value page, no cash value in the term. In this UL, I've designed it with none versus the manu, and then kind of our insurance benefit there for all of those. And actually, our existing one was 500, so we're kind of comparing it to $1 million, but that's okay. Again, things like an IRR comparison out there. Again, existing term plan versus the conversion options. And again, we're adding a little bit more coverage in this one as well, and all of your contact information. So the next thing we want to do in sort of prepping for this meeting is actually prepare the shared link. So just as we did with that shared needs analysis, the next thing we want to do is actually get a shared link to this report itself, because this is going to be our follow-up after the meeting. So again, I'm going to copy this. We're going to be able to use this kind of in the future after the meeting. I'm going to say request visitor information. I'm going to gate this with first name, last name, and I'll just update that shared link. Now, depending on your approach, if you're sort of comparing this before, or depending on how you collected the needs analysis, this is another item where, again, when we take this sort of kind of shared case link, it's something that we could build into our actual meeting itself. Let me just save this. I'll go back into our policy review here and just kind of edit it. So again, rather than, we could say discuss products, and we could actually put in our shared link there. So if you wanted to disclose this before the meeting to say, here's what we might talk about, ideas, I can use that shared link in there, save that. I won't send it to my guests this time, but remember, now when they get this in their, sort of agenda, we can get, please fill this in prior to the meetings, we get some ideas. If we've got that back in time, or if we had maybe sent it out over email rather than in the invite, lots of ways to get that kind of in front of your client. But now actually in our agenda, we can have kind of our idea of this shared link. Again, all the client really needs to do is click on the link. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it so I can show it in a new incognito window and just show you what the client would see when they click on it. So again, they're directed to your sort of landing page. Again, your logo here. This is the gate that we put on there requiring their information. I'm going to proceed. And I get taken to my client version of the case. So whether you share this before or after the meeting, whether you share it in the invite or follow up with an email, I find this is a really effective way to let people see kind of the report. So the idea is first we're going to set up the Zoom meeting, we're going to review the case and go through it with them in detail. We've kind of added our notes in advance, and then after the meeting we're going to follow up either again by email or could be Messenger, sending them something, could even be shooting them the link while you're on the screen share. So as you're doing that meeting, there's always a chat box that you could use, and you could say, take a copy of this. Maybe the client even wants to bookmark it. You could say, hey, save this as a bookmark so that they can easily reference it. And again, they can go through this report. So it's exactly as you designed. You can see we've got all kind of the what is a term conversion. They get to see the needs analysis that they filled out now packaged in the report. Any sort of questions or comments, again, they can do that. Your number or your email, that's all driven from your account settings as well. So these links are highly personalized. You could even link to your website. So if they really quickly have a question, they can call you. If they're viewing it on their tablet, again, they can FaceTime you right from that link. And they can go through now after the meeting or before the meeting, and they can kind of look at some of the different options that we're sort of looking at here. So again, we can see sort of our different options. We can go through the report. And again, any of those sort of tooltips that we added are going to be visible to the client. So even when they go through the shared link, you can see they can now move their mouse over and do all of those interactions that you were doing, taking them through the case, teaching them about the points. They can toggle on those callouts, and those are visible to them. And again, they have the ability as well. I would, as I mentioned, showing them the plus minus symbol. While you're taking them through the screen share, you can also show them things like how to use these legend guarantees. And now they have some interaction with the report, and they can actually engage in it. One of the other sort of tips that I recommend is when you're doing the screen share, just be cautious of your zoom. You can see that this is actually 100% for me, but a lot of the time I'm zoomed out to show more of my screen. So when you're on the Zoom call itself, just remember there is a browser zoom button at the top there. I'm just using the shortcut, but you can see there's a little magnifying glass. You can click that and zoom in on certain things, and you can zoom out. So it's important before you actually go into the meeting to maybe play around, just make sure that on screen it's as big as possible. You can see all these elements, and again, when you share the case out to them, your clients will be able to see those as well. Again, we've got things like our total coverage amount. You can see we can get that term rider drops, toggle that call out on or off, and our nice presentation summary. Now, as I mentioned, they can go through this full report, but they can also add comments. So they can say, again, they can add a comment. So I really like the term rider product. Again, if they were interested in actually applying, they can specify that and say, hey, I'm interested in this product. Let's start the application. That's going to notify you as the advisor. But again, one of the best things about this is that when you share a link, whether, again, before or after the meeting, so again, think about sharing your material before or following up with an email to the recipients after, is that when you're actually back in your LDA account, so again, I'm going to go back here and refresh, any of those shared case visits, I'm going to see how long my clients were on them, how engaged they were in clicking them. So again, you might send it before, they might look at it briefly, but you're going to get notified every single time after that they go and visit it. So you'll really get a sense of, after you make your presentation, how was it received? Were the prospects actually going to view it? If they favored it, have they visited it frequently? And you can even click on this advanced case statistics to drill down on sort of that behavior even more. So when I came into the report, you can see I talked a little bit about the disclaimers, but I pretty much breezed by them. I spent a little bit of time working on the needs analysis, but most of my time was focused on things like the premiums, some of the charts, maybe some more of the graphs. So you can see, again, I spent almost a minute on here. It's showing my average clicks. So was I using things like the legend options? When I'm on the cash value page, I spent more time, I did more clicks. So it tells you a little bit about the engagement. You're also going to be able to see any of those sort of comments from the report. So you can see Phil here says, I really like the Term Rider product. That's great. To our meeting. Or, I think we had a great meeting, or whatever the kind of the scenario is. Again, you can add comments back and forth. So we can see Phil, the client here, has commented. I've commented back. Now, the other nice thing about doing comments on the report itself is that, when we sort of look at our client record and our contact for this particular client, all of that information is going to be saved. So we know exactly when the comments were made. We've got kind of a log of all the change history of when we kind of modify the report. We've even got kind of time viewed by our client and when specifically. And all these really are assets to our compliance backup. One last thing we might think about sharing, again, before or after to our client, but that we could put in that meeting invite, is if we wanted to link them to existing products that they had. So again, in this scenario, we're doing sort of a term review here. If we wanted to link them to that kind of the cases, we could say that, again, we're going to generate a policy summary. So again, any of the policies we have kind of in force for our client can be generated as well. And this is something, again, where a shared link comes in really handy. In our meeting invite, we could go back, again, edit this, review needs. It could be review existing products. And again, I can share that link there to our existing products. Again, I won't send this, I'll just kind of save it in that policy review. But essentially, discuss existing products, we can send a link. That's going to link our client again to their policy summary. Got all the different products that we have in Force so that they just kind of have a summary of that. Again, something that you might present to them and say, hey, you might want to bookmark this for your records. Same sort of idea when they go to that report. If, again, I'm logged in as mine, but you're going to get that sort of notification in your account. And I'll just really touch on kind of notifications. We're going to see Phil has visited the shared case. Phil has filled out the needs analysis. And again, we're going to see all of those kind of things get notified. So we're going to get some kind of, kind of engagement warning. I would say if you are sending things out to your clients in advance and they're not filling them out, that's even more reason to say, maybe I better confirm that meeting appointment and just check that they're okay. I find a lot of people, some of them don't use digital calendars. So again, if you were sending this, maybe you want to, kind of use that as an indication that you may need to send it on another medium, and just, again, call them at the time of the meeting and share that kind of link out of the calendar there. Now, some other general sort of tips. Again, one, is mind your surroundings. So, again, a lot of the times we are sitting on top of our computers and people are sort of looking up our nose. So, again, make sure you have kind of a comfortable setup. Obviously, grab a cup of water. One of the things I like to do, if I've got a big meeting, is just sort of test my bandwidth. So again, if I just say speed test, Google's got a great little speed test that I can do and say, how is my connection? Is there an issue? Do I have fast speed? I like to make sure there's no updates on Chrome, or I've done my restart in the morning. If you are going to do kind of product live and live surveys with your clients, again, think about, if you are doing that, having a couple different tabs. So one of the things I really like is, if I'm going to do work in LDA, I may have my report in one tab where I can reference it and stay in that. But if I wanted to, kind of have a separate tab, one neat little trick is if you hit Control, or even on Mac it's Command, you can see as you click it's going to open up a new tab. So again, you may have your Manage Clients open in a new tab, but are only going to reference your report. And again, that's a good way to kind of stay within the boundaries. But if you do need to go out and grab something else, you can use sort of that control element to get out there and kind of take a new look. So again, anywhere I hit, again, if I want to open in a new tab, I can do that. So again, have some cases handy. Again, if you are in that Manage Clients area, again, you might work with things like the tag. So if I go into Cases, Manage Cases, If I'm looking at sort of the cases, maybe I've prepared a couple of different examples for my client. That's where sort of that case name or case tag comes in. So again, I could filter out TC. Those are all my term conversions. But you could make a unique tag for just your clients, and that way you can kind of filter them out of your whole cases area. That way we're only going to see that client when we come back to it, but we can see all the different examples that we've done for a particular client. So if we want to tag it either by case tag or again by client, again, I can see all the cases I've done for Phil Mickelson simply by applying a filter. So you can see I filtered out Phil Mickelson there. And again, all of those are going to show up. So I'm just seeing that client. Again, even if I navigate away, I come back to my Manage Cases area, I've got that filter applied, so I'm only going to see those clients. And again, just a good way to not show all your cases for all your clients out there, especially when we're on kind of a meeting. Again, be careful, close any kind of other apps that you don't want to accidentally come up when you go in the background. And remember, there are lots of other tools that you can add for screen sharing. So I talked about extensions a little bit. There are lots of apps where you can draw on screen, do sort of a co-browsing. One of the other sort of tools that I've been playing around with is Avoma, which is a great little meeting recorder. And basically the way it works is it kind of attaches to your meeting, and that's actually going to take notes automatically. So again, it'll talk about companies' outcomes. So it has a little bit of AI in the background, but I find this is a nice little free tool that, again, can attach into your calendar and sit on to be your personal note taker. So you can, again, focus in on presenting your case. The note taker is going to take the conversation and sort of splice out and give you kind of a transcript. And again, that's something that you could take that transcript from Avoma and actually bring it into a meeting note in LDA. So again, if I went to my sort of client file, back to Phil here, I can actually add that Avoma transcript in there as a client note to keep on record. So it's one of the tools we've been playing around with. But remember, the Chrome store has a lot of kind of good add-ons for different extensions. So things like Zoom, Meets, GoToMeeting, Teams, they all have these kind of add-ons that you can customize as well that might make your meeting a little more interactive as you're doing it. But again, I think all those sort of tips combined make a really effective meeting. And again, it's all about engaging our client while we're going through the report. So we really want to take them through, educate them on sort of the products that they have, the flow of the meeting. But again, as we follow up, we're tying all of that information to the case. So we're giving them access to it. We're going to get notified, and it's going to give us an overall communication advantage. And I'm hearing from a lot of advisors, again, they used to be able to book 2 meetings, maybe 3 a day, and now sometimes it's 8, 9, 10. So think about how we can scale that process, make our meetings as effective as possible, and leverage that in future ones. So those are a couple ideas to not only pick the best screen sharing tool, properly set up the case, work with the case, presenting it to our clients, and then leave really dynamic follow-up material that's actually going to notify us when our client views, give us insights into their interests, and help us close the deal. So I really want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you got some great ideas, and I hope that makes kind of video presentation and client onboarding that much easier. If you have any thoughts or feedbacks, again, always we're open. Send us on the live chat. Get in touch with us, and look forward to seeing you on next month's webinar. So thanks so much again. Take care.